Hello, I'm Paul Peterson for Aging in LA. If an adult becomes unable to handle day-to-day financial or medical affairs, someone else must step in to take care of things. Today we will find out how to get help for a senior citizen who cannot manage alone. Stay tuned for Aging in LA. If a person becomes incapacitated and has planned ahead and signed durable powers of attorney for finances and health care, the person named in those documents can take charge of the incapacitated person's affairs. However, if no planning has been done, which is a common occurrence, then family members must ask a court to appoint a conservator or guardian. This person will have the court-ordered authority and responsibility to manage the incapacitated person's affairs. That person is usually called an adult guardian or conservator. Today, our guests are experts in these matters. Joel Simon is an attorney whose practice includes extensive experience in making court appearances in general probate and probate conservatorship areas. And Francine Teitelbaum, also an attorney and a member of the Professional Fiduciary Association of California. Thanks to both of you for joining me. And Francine, let me start with you. What is a conservator and what is it that you do to protect a person's assets?
Well, as you said, a conservator is someone who is chosen to protect and manage the assets and care of a person who's deemed to be unable to do so for themselves. And our responsibilities range all over the place.
Maybe healthcare issues and
healthcare issues, finances.
Right.
We oftentimes I'll receive a phone call from a concerned relative or a friend, and they will ask me, they'll tell me about a situation of someone that is having problems. And then I will ask them, what kind of problems are they having? Are they forgetting to pay their bills? Has their insurance lapsed? Are they not eating? Do they have groceries? Are they unable to drive? So I would ask them a numerous amount of questions, and then I would go out and meet the person and make an assessment myself of what their needs are and whether I think that my services would be of help.
I see. I see. That makes perfect sense. So there is an assessment period, so you can actually determine if that's required.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Now, Joel is an expert in these affairs. Going to court is nobody's idea of a favorite day.
No.
So how is this process for naming a conservator for a person's estate? Is it something to be intimidated by?
There's a number of things one can do to make it easier.
Okay. And what are some of those things?
And the first thing, if your audience doesn't get anything more today, is to take charge of their affairs. California has some basic forms that one can fill out. They're called an Advanced Health Care Directive and a Durable Power of Attorney. And in these, even if they can't afford to go to an attorney or they don't want to go to an attorney, they can get these documents, they can fill them out. They can say, if something happens, if I get hit by a truck tomorrow, if I have a stroke, if something happens to me and I can't make my own decisions, who's the person I want to be in charge and have authority? And if these documents are filled out, you can also specify whether you want heroic measures taken or you don't want heroic measures taken. You want and have guidance that would allow those decisions to be made by someone who you really trust. if these documents are in place, there's a high probability you wouldn't even need to get involved with the court process, because the person would have the authority to speak to the doctors and have the authority to make these decisions if you were unable to do so.
Right. Well,
So-
one of the problems, though, with seniors is the diminished abilities kind of goes with the territory. You lose the thread.
You have to act while you have the capacity to do it. If you don't,
have to act.
and that's the thing, because in California, the law is pretty clear. If you don't tell people what you want and there's not a record, then you will be subjected to the full course of medical treatment and every measure taken to do things that maybe somebody wouldn't want done. As far as the procedures, when you haven't done that, then you get into a very formal court process. It's very expensive, and the court has to basically make a decision whether the person lacks the ability to take care of their health,
Right.
or they can't feed themselves, or they have maybe there's some issue where they've lost capacity and there's someone taking advantage of them.
Well,
We
yes.
get reports from banks where somebody's coming in, all of a sudden, the gardener is taking large amounts of money,
Right. That
or the
check for
hairdresser.
$5,500, yes.
Those kinds of things. The other way it can come about is obviously if there's some type of medical emergency where there's been a stroke, the lack of capacity because of dementia, where a court has to get involved because...
Right. Well, what about when families are in turmoil? Often there is a substantial estate that's at stake, and the brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews are quarreling. Is that where a conservatorship, independent of the family, can be useful?
The use of the conservatorship would come about because of the lack of the capacity. As long as somebody has capacity, they could determine who they want to be in charge of their affairs. If we get to court and the family is not able to agree, the judge, when he sits and looks at this, the judge has only one thing in mind, and that is what is the best thing to do for the person that needs the help. If the family can't agree on what to do, the judge is only going to see that they're fighting over who's going to control the money.
Right, gotcha.
And if the judge gets a sense of that, there's no question you're going to have somebody like Ms. Teitelbaum be appointed, because the judge isn't going to allow the estate to be chewed up by family squabbles.
I got you. And that's actually a good thing to know. Francine, there's two things that we've already mentioned. The financial affairs are one thing, but making medical decisions is another part of this conservatorship as well, correct?
Yes.
Now, how do you handle that? Are you actually talking to doctors and providers?
Yes, I am. The first thing that I do when I'm appointed as a conservator is that I interview my client and I try to get a sense of what they would want to happen. If they don't have the capacity, then I try to make the most reasonable decisions, but oftentimes I'm calling for second opinions. I have to, as if it was for myself, we step in their shoes. So I'll have to read about the various illness that they have. I'm consenting for their medications oftentimes.
Wow.
And so there's side effects that go along with the medications, and we have a large responsibility, and we take it very seriously.
Right. Well, and you belong to, in fact, a professional association that takes care of that. Let me see if I get this right. Professional Fiduciary Association of California.
Yes.
I got that right. Wow.
Yes, you did.
I'm amazed sometimes. Well, and now, Joel, we're all subjected to sometimes horror stories that appear in the press, and I'm thinking of the poor young woman in a coma in Florida, where there was a genuine and sincere disagreement between the spouse who was saying that the person in a coma had one kind of wish, and then the mother and father who said, that's not true, that's not true. And this thing dragged out over 16 years, if I recall.
It's sad that there wasn't the right written, clear expression of intent. And again, I think your posting or somewhere in the program we'll post a website.
Well, let's do that right now. We'll go ahead and post.
and you know, I've put these forms there so people can see them and download them and fill them out. If you have expressed your intent, the situation that happened in Florida just would not occur.
Well, and
it's so important for people to take the time to do that, because none of us are infallible, and we don't know what's going to happen. And to me, it's kind of like providing for your family, like you would have health insurance,
yes,
like you would want to make arrangements to have car insurance. It's of the same order of magnitude that, you know, if something happens to me, what do I want done?
Right, and who do I want deciding on my behalf?
Correct.
No, I understand that. Francine, have you ever had that moment in time when you actually had to dig through a person's effects? Perhaps they've had a stroke that's incapacitated them, where they have actually written, maybe in a document to a friend, like, this is what I hope happens if, God forbid, this ever happens.
Yes, I have.
Wow.
Yes, I have.
That's got to be quite a moment.
Yes, and I abide by their wishes. And it doesn't matter what we as professionals would do for ourselves. We're abiding by their wishes, and if they want full resuscitation, then that's something we have to do. If they don't want full resuscitation, that's also something we do. And we have to make sure that the doctors follow their wishes.
Okay. Now, when Joel, these durable powers of attorney, these are legal documents, right? Are they things that need to be notarized, or simply filling them out sufficient?
They're on the financial, especially the real property, they have to be notarized. The health care power of attorney, the advanced health care directive, can be done by witnesses. Right. It doesn't necessarily have to have a notary. It can. The other document, when people have assets that they would want to consider as a trust, that requires some help with an attorney knowledgeable in planning, but would divorce the court from having to get involved with their personal affairs. If those type of issues are taken care of, there's very unlikely you would need a conservatorship, unless you got into a situation where there's a progressive illness such as dementia, where the law just does not allow, under a power of attorney, certain kinds of medications to be given unless it's court supervised.
Wow.
And so even with these documents, there could be a situation where one can no longer live in the house, where they need to be, because of their illness, they are prone to wander, so they need some kind of secured perimeter residence, or the administration of dementia medications, where the only game in town would be a conservatorship. And so there again, though, you can specify in these documents which person would have that to be the one to make those calls and make sure you're taken care of well.
You can see that this is there is so much data out there on people, and there are sharks swimming in these waters who see, well, this person's in their 80s and they're still a homeowner and it's an unencumbered property, and the next thing you know, they're getting their roof fixed or something. Is that something you can forestall as a conservator as well, correct?
Absolutely.
Now, this could be critically important if a person is alone or lives across the continent from their family.
Yes. And oftentimes we get calls from relatives that are out of town, and they need to be able to trust a professional that can go in and protect the person's assets and their care.
Yeah.
I think one point really important here is, and I've worked with Francine a lot, having someone of her character and abilities can actually help to keep a person in their house, as opposed to not being in the house, because if it gets too bad, they'll move them out. But if there's the ability, putting in care, place in the house, help to resolve the issues, can a lot of times prevent the necessity of having to go into a residence.
Well, you know, people are so unfamiliar with with late-in-life issues, not end-of-life now, but late-in-life issues, that they don't know how many gradations there are in care. I didn't know until I got involved with the Department of Aging. Who ever heard of non-medical in-home care? Well, these aren't licensed medical professionals. These are people who can help you cook and clean and care for yourself.
Yes.
And now, are those other issues that where you're able to help a family? Like, look, we're not talking $8,000 a month here. We're talking maybe $1,000, $1,200.
Well,
those numbers didn't impress you.
it really depends on a person's needs.
I see.
And if a person needs 24-hour care in their home, that's quite a different story than having somebody come in who just needs to have someone help them with grocery shopping and cooking and cleaning.
I understand. Wow.
So we try very hard to keep people in their homes.
But you would help in the selection process, perhaps, of finding an assisted living facility?
Absolutely. And when I do that, I have a lot of experience in assisted living, and there's various criteria that I look for. The most important thing is what the person would want themselves. And I look at my client and I think, well, are they of the character that they've been involved in social activities and wanting to go out into the community and have a big hullabaloo, you know?
Yeah.
And then there's other people who would really want more of a home-like environment and would be happier in a small facility.
Right, like a residential setting.
Yeah, just
I
a small
understand.
residential setting.
See, this would have been very helpful. It's time, unfortunately, for a short break, but when we return, we will continue our discussion of guardianships and conservatorships for people who have become incapacitated. Please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
It's fun to be a good neighbor, so say hi to your new neighbors at the LA Zoo. And bring Grandpa. They've got a walking buddy for him, too. They've expanded, so there's even more to see and do. Don't wonder who's here, because just for kicks, they've got birds on sticks. Whatever you do, make sure Mom and Dad come early, because they're certainly ready to say hi to you. And this invitation comes from your good neighbors here at the LA Zoo.
The visit to the observatory starts here. Online at www.griffithobservatory.org.
Choose a time, make your reservations up to 2 days before you go.
You'll have to park down the hill at one of the 2 designated parking lots, and then you have to take a shuttle to the observatory. They thought of everything.
Let's make it happen.
Welcome back to Aging in LA. Our topic today, conservatorships for incapacitated persons. Our guests are Joel Simon, an attorney whose practice includes extensive experience in making court appearances in general probate and probate conservatorship areas. And Francine Teitelbaum. I misspoke earlier, she is not an attorney, but she is a member of the Professional Fiduciary Association of California. Thank you both again for being here. This is actually a fascinating topic. And Joel, you mentioned something in the break. There is a difference between guardianship and conservatorship. Can you explain, please?
Yes, in California, guardianship is for a person who's under age 18, and conservatorships are for a person who's an adult.
I see.
So when in other states, they have it differently, so each state can be different. But here in California, when you have a minor, it would be under guardianship, and conservatorship would be when they would become an adult.
Well, that's really interesting. So you kind of be aware of your location, if you will, where you are. And you mentioned, Francine, that relatives from out of state who are living on the other coast may call with concerns and issues, and by having a conservator, they can call you directly and express their concerns.
Yes, and we have a good family relationship so that they're at ease, and we keep them abreast of what's going on. And it just seems to work out the best for everyone.
Yeah, but that turns you into a referee sometimes. I'm reminded of that old story. You can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. And families are often ripe with disputes and tensions. And
Yes.
but by having an outside person and as a conservator you are, but with authority,
Yes.
backed by the court, then you are in effect a referee. Saying, no, your wishes don't come first. My client comes first.
Well, and we explain that to the families, that this is what your aunt or mother would have wanted, and people usually understand that. You explain to the families that if it was your life that you were making these decisions on, you would want to have all of the things that.
But people work, people work so hard to acquire an estate, and they have in their mind an idea of what they want to happen to that estate. And it's easy for people to forget that it's important. The person who earned it ought to be able to determine its eventual distribution. Do you find this as well?
I think that goes more to what happens with the trust or will when one passes. I think the concentration with the conservatorship and the focus of the court is very much here and now. What is in the best interest of the person who can't make the decision that will give him the best quality of life in the least restrictive environment? And while the family may be more concerned about what they're going to get or what's going to happen after Mama's gone, the court is more concerned about making sure Mama has everything that she needs now and has the best possible care now for her quality of life. And so Francine, when she's acting, her focus may be much different than what people are looking at. My experience has been that a lot of times when family is put in charge, the distinction between what is theirs and what they're entitled to and what should be done now gets blurred.
Oh, yes.
And it's like, well, it's mine, instead of what's in the best interest of the incapacitated person.
Right. But the aging, as we get toward the end of life, is a lot longer than it used to be. We're talking people living well into their 90s, but they may in fact become impaired in, let's say, their mid-70s. A 20-year conservatorship, is that becoming sort of the norm now, Joel?
Well, I don't know there's a norm. I have cases where I'm on my 29th and 30th accountings. Wow. And because they started at a young age, they maybe had an illness that impaired them. It's all over the spectrums. Again, our focus normally in the office when people come in is to avoid helping them to avoid having the court supervision, because they put into place the mechanisms for their care. But yeah, it's just hard to pinpoint it. It goes all varying lengths.
But well, Francine, I can sure see from personal experience where being experienced and knowledgeable helps to make decisions more quickly that need to be made. It is often difficult in a family to get, say, 6 siblings to agree that we need to do this. Now, with a conservator in your role, you've seen this before, so you may know that we need to move to the next level of care.
Right. And the most important thing is to try to keep people what they call the least restrictive environment. Means that we hope that people will be able to maintain living in an assisted living as opposed to going into a nursing home. Right. Even to the end of their life. And most recently I had a situation where the doctor recommended somebody going into nursing care, and we were able to arrange 24-hour care in the assisted living facility so that the person could maintain their home-like environment.
Right. I can see with many seniors the notion of being warehoused someplace, just stuck on a shelf, would really, it's humiliating, it's degrading, and yet that happens all the time.
Yes.
Now, can the court actually order all of the steps from medical care to the financial arrangements? Because some of this care towards the end of life is very expensive.
The court doesn't make that decision. What the court does is it empowers someone like Francine to make that decision. The court determines whether there's a need. The court can authorize, but ultimately the court isn't saying the person should live in A or B. The court is appointing the conservator to make that judgment call. And if ultimately it's going to repose itself in that action. If there's a dispute about whether that should be done, ultimately the court will have to determine that. But the judge doesn't sit there and say it should be A or B. The judge is appointing somebody to make a decision and determine whether, if the person doesn't have capacity, then someone else has to do it.
I want to make sure that website is up again, because I hear the echo of what you said earlier. Take care of this early. Pay attention. Get the forms filled out. So, Alan, if you could, there we are, right on screen there. These are important. There's important information there. And take steps now. You've got your wits about you. You're watching the show, after all. Get these forms filled out. It takes a tremendous burden off the family. I'm sure you've seen people like, thank goodness you're here, Francine. We didn't know what to do.
Yes, yes.
Because that is a sense of relief.
Yes, and in many instances, when I've come in, if the relatives, for example, are out of town and they suspect that there's been some financial abuse, we come in and we look at the bank statements and we investigate. And sometimes we do have to go and report people to the police and have them follow through on a police investigation. But
well, interestingly, the police are starting to build these teams to respond to elder abuse, whether it's financial or physical abuse, because we're becoming more familiar.
Unfortunately, in Los Angeles County, the probability of getting the police to do something, especially if there's family involved, is extremely low priority.
Yes.
And I could tell you I have cases of what we call elder abuse, dependency abuse, and it's just...
I wish we had more time, Joel, but time's up. Today's edition of Aging in LA is over, but thanks so much to our guests in the studio. Joel Simon, an attorney with the law offices which are in the San Fernando Valley, and Francine Teitelbaum, a member of the Professional Fiduciary Association of California. The Los Angeles Department of Aging produces this program with CityView, Channel 35, so that seniors living in Los Angeles and surrounding communities are well informed on the many issues that face them in everyday life. And also to let you know of the many services that the Department of Aging offers our senior citizens. Now, we'd like to hear from you with comments on the program, what you like, what you think can be improved, and ideas for future programs. Please give us a call. The number's right there on your screen, area code 213-252-4088. That's 213-252-4088. Call us with your comments and ideas. We look forward to hearing from you. I'm Paul Peterson for the Los Angeles Department of Aging, the people here at CityView Channel 35, and all of our guests on Aging in LA. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.